안녕하세요 여러분, 이 채널은 한국어입니다. 방문해주셔서 감사합니다. So as I mentioned in the last video, the best way to begin your Korean language learning journey is to first learn Hangul.
No, God!
I know. Sounds like a hassle. Seriously, if somebody came up to you and said, I really want to learn English, but I don't have time to learn the English alphabet. Sounds ridiculous, right? And it sounds like it would be hard. It would be. So, with all of that in mind, let's get into the video. There are technically 28 letters, or tamu, in Hangul. There are 14 consonants, 14 vowels, 5 double consonants, which get a bad rap. They're actually not that bad when you have the right person explaining it to you, which is not me, but I will talk about that later. And 7 diphthongs. And this all sounds intimidating, but I promise you, if you dedicate just a few hours to learning Hangul, in no time you'll be reading Korean words. So, with all of that out of the way, let's start. So there are 2 really cool facts about tamu, or the Korean letters. One of them we'll get to later, but the first one is that they each have their own, well, the consonants anyway, have their own unique names that are easy to remember. In this video, we're going to be breaking down the alphabet by the Hangul character, my version of the romanized way of spelling the character's name, and the sounds they make. Let's look at each one, starting with the consonants. The Hangul alphabet, much like the ABCs, go in an order. So, for the consonants, we start with kiok. Kiok. The sound that they make is a G and a K. The kiok in many words, it doesn't exactly make a G sound like graph, and it doesn't make a K sound like kite, but somewhere in the middle. Kiok. Next up we have nian. Nian. Tigut. Tigut. Real is a complicated letter that confuses a lot of people. And the reason why I have a star next to it is because usually anytime you see this letter shown anywhere, people tell you to pronounce it either like an R or an L or somewhere in between. I personally find that depending on where in the word the real is, I pronounce it like a D and I don't get corrected on it. So for example, the word alda means to know. Because of where the real is located and the letter that follows it, it makes a straight L sound. But when this word is conjugated, which we will talk about in a later video, it suddenly turns into arayo. Arayo. To me, that sounds like a D. And usually if I say this to either a native Korean speaker or someone that knows how to speak Korean, I don't get corrected on it. So do with that information what you will. Next up we have miam. Miam. Piup. Piup. Shiot. Shiot. Iang. Iang. I've also put an asterisk next to this letter because it has multiple functions, not just different sounds. Chiut. Chiut. This letter is interesting because it's not exactly a J sound like jasmine and not exactly a ch sound like chide, but somewhere in the middle. Imagine trying to say jacket, but starting your J with more of a T sound. Jacket. 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 Hopefully that helps you. Next up we've got chiut. Chiut. Kiok. Kiok. Tigut. Tigut. Piup. Piup. Hiet. Hiet. If you've been following along, you've noticed that some of these letters make more than one sound. Many of them make a T sound. Kind of. You might be wondering, how can an S or a J possibly sound like a T? We'll cover that more when I talk about pachim in the next video. So one more rundown of these consonants. We've got kiok, nian, tigut, real, miam, piup, shiot, iang, chiut, chiut, kiok, tigut, piup, hiet. Remember when I said there were 2 cool things about the letters and their names? Well, the second thing was that, let's say, kiok. You'll notice that the beginning and the end of the name of this letter make 2 different sounds, a G and a K. Kiok. or tiget, whereas miam both begin and end with an M sound. Shia starts with an S sound, ends with a T sound. My tutor taught me that, and it was the most eye-opening thing about Hangul that he taught me. I don't know if he came up with it, but it's still a cool thing to notice. One letter that I want to bring to your attention is tiget. If you notice, it begins and ends both with a T sound, but the two sounds that it makes is a T and a Ch sound. But if you look at a word like kati, which means together, that tiget sounds like a Ch sound. So now let's get into the vowels. Two things I want to say about the vowels is number one, they don't have names. They just have the sounds that they make. And the second thing I want to say is that if you have ever learned Spanish, either in middle school or you just know Spanish, if you want to remember the sounds that Korean vowels make, think of Spanish. So like we have in English A, E, I, O, U. In Spanish, they have A, E, I, O, U. Those sound closer to Korean vowels than English ones. So try to keep that in mind as we go through this list. So the first vowel we have is A. Next up we have Ya. O, Ya, O, Yo, U, U. E, Ye, E, Ye, I, If you see letters like Ya or Yo, where it has two lines instead of the one, you know that it has a Y sound to it. So A has one line, Ya has two. O has one, Yo has two. O, one, Yo, two. So if you see a vowel that has two lines, you know to add a Y sound. In an attempt to explain why some of these vowels make different sounds, I just want to show you some of these examples. So take O, for example. Here you have two words, molda and sunmul. Molda, which means to be far, and sunmul, which is gift or present. If you notice, they both have the same vowel, but they make two different sounds. Molda, which to me sounds like O, or O, A-W. And then sunmul, which sounds like sun, mul, sunmul. Also, the E, Ye, and Ye, I have listed as hat and yes, but the other two I have is like get or wet. That's the way that they are shown in like the dictionary. However, apparently the way people say them, they sound the same. So people are starting not to pay much attention to the sound difference. However, spelling still counts. So you're gonna need to know how certain words are spelled so that you don't misspell them. Kind of like O, where it has two different sounds. E also has different sounds. So if you say Jasmine she, right, that ends with an E sound, a strong E sound. But if I say 하고 싶어요, it has a different sound. Same letter, two different sounds, something to keep in mind. As for the last vowel, the best way that it's been described to me, which helped me remember it, is that it's a straight line. So remember or think of it as though it's the floor. Right? It's the surface of the floor, and you're walking by and you see a rotten egg or something laying on it. Your initial reaction would be to go, ugh, right? That's kind of the sound you want to make. Or someone like punches you in the gut and you go, ugh. Don't do that while you're speaking, but that's closer to the sound that you want to make. So a lot of people will see this letter and they'll pronounce it accidentally as like O or U. Think about the word Hangeul. Hangeul. There's that sound there. Something to keep in mind, you will need it. Let's move on. One last thing I want to say about all of these letters is that stroke order matters. And I don't actually know the stroke orders, but Go Billy Korean does. So his video is linked in the description box below. He goes into detail about how each letter should be written. So do you remember when I mentioned this guy, Iyoung? And I said to you that he has two different functions? Well, in one case he makes an ing sound, but his other function is to accompany vowels. You will never see a vowel by itself. It will always have a consonant, and if it doesn't have a different consonant, it will always be with an ian. Now we move on to the double consonants. They have the same names as their regular consonants, except there's a sang attached to it. So sangkyuk, sangdi, sangji, sangshi, right? Those are the double consonants. The way that they are pronounced gives so many people so much trouble, including me. But there is a series of videos from a channel called All Things Korean, which just broke it down so beautifully of how to pronounce these particular letters. And, you know, so many people teaching Korean will say, you know, we don't really have these sounds in the English language, which is true when you consider them as individual letters. However, she breaks down, for example, I'll give you one example from her videos, for sanggyuk, right? She says, think of the word hiccup or nikki, right? That sound is what you're going for. There's a word, gamokta, right? I think I'm saying it correctly. If there's a native Korean that's watching this, please let me know. Did I say that correctly? Gamokta. Yeah, the videos that help me get closer, at least, to pronouncing that letter correctly was from this channel. So I highly, highly suggest, because you will need it, that you go into the description box and click the link to those videos. If they are not already in a playlist, I will create a playlist and link that. They'll still direct to her channel, but they'll at least be in a order that you can easily watch. Last but not least, on to diphthongs. Diphthongs essentially are just the vowels that already exist that we went over, but they're combined to make new sounds, right? So we have wa, wo, we, we. So the reason why there's an asterisk next to that third way is because it's not intuitive that that's how you would pronounce it. And to explain that better, here's a TikTok that I saw on Twitter that was both hilarious but also super helpful.
자, 오, 에, 오에, 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 왜, 왜. 잘했어. 우, 에, 우에, 우에, 왜, 왜, 왜. 오, 잘했어. 너무 잘했어. 오, 이, 왜.
Yo, every time I see that TikTok, I die. Like, it's so funny. I love that TikTok so much. It's so funny. So there are some sounds that are not found in the Korean language that we have in English. Those sounds include the F sound, the V sound, the X sound, and the Z sound. The way they work around this, and I'm sure if you listen to K-pop, you've probably noticed this already, they use Korean letters to basically replace those sounds. F becomes P. So Monsta X has a song called Fantasia, right? But they pronounce it Fantasia. When you're learning Korean, you're gonna need to use the Naver dictionary. If you look at how the word Naver is spelled, it's spelled Neipa. So they replace the V with a B. X, again, going back to Monsta X, they are my favorite group, I'm so sorry. But if you look at their names spelled in Hangul, you can get an X sound, but it takes multiple letters. So here we have X. That's how they get that sound. And Z is usually replaced with a G. So like the word pizza, in Korea they pronounce it pizza. Super cute. Anyway, so now I think it's time for a little bit of practice. Let's see if I've done my job correctly and explained Hangeul in a way that makes sense. Feel free to pause the video in order to work these out. The timestamps to this video will be in the description box. Also, the timeline should be broken up into chapters, so if you need to go back, you can do that, feel free. There will be two parts to it. The first part will give you a verb. It'll give you, again, phonetically, my version of romanization for that word, or what it will sound like in Korean. In the last column, the answer will show up after a couple of seconds. In the second part, I'm going to reverse it and give you the Hangul. I want you to tell me what the word is. Or you don't have to tell me, but write it down and see if you can figure it out. And then, in a comment below, tell me how you did. Let's go. So, how was it? Was it fun? Did this video help you? If it did, please hit the like button. Please feel free to subscribe for more. I will see you in the next video. We will talk about paktum and syllable blocks, how you actually build a Korean word. Maybe I should have done that first. Whatever. Please let me know in a comment below if you have any comments or questions or corrections. I am also a beginner, so I'm honestly just trying to get you to the level where I am so that we can study together. That's really the point of all of this. So if there are corrections, please feel free to leave them down below so that we can all learn from them, and that would be greatly appreciated. I will see you in the next video. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and comment, and feel free to follow on Instagram and Twitter, and I will see you next time. 안녕히 가세요.